I'm going to go ahead and get the show starting. We're going to start with the item development presentation. So again, these are all kind of the do's and do-nots and tips and tricks for formulating successful multiple choice questions for certification or licensing examination. I tend to do this item development presentation like in my sleep. I've done it so many times, it just kind of rolls.
Right.
So I might kind of speak through this very quickly. So someone on the call, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to stop me, speak up, and ask me to elaborate on something if you need anything.
Okay.
So the purpose of an examination, like why do we have this program? Why do we do what we do? The purpose is to enable a qualified candidate to demonstrate competency while precluding unqualified candidates from achieving the distinction, the certification, the CFLE. So with that in mind, we really want every single test question or item that we develop to mirror that purpose. We want our candidates who are competent to be able to easily answer it correct and move on with their lives. And then we want candidates who are not competent to practice to struggle and hopefully get the question wrong. So we don't want, the flip side of that, we don't want to confuse or confound or frustrate our competent candidates. And we also don't want those candidates who are not competent to practice to easily know the test questions or the answers and to use test-taking strategies or tips to find the answer. And everything we discussed during this webinar is going to be how we do that and why that's the main goal of why there's all these rules and stuff in place. Briefly about security, everyone will be getting login information to our online item writing system. We ask that you keep that information secure. Please don't write the link, your password, and your username all on one Post-it note and then leave that out on your desk. But you don't have to lock it in a safe or anything like that. You're going to be prompted to change your password the first time you log into this system. We do not have any restrictions on the passwords. We just ask that it's something you'll remember because I won't have access to it, and something that someone would not be able to guess should they be trying accessing, your account. So no password or password one. We always ask that you access our online item writing system from a secure location with a trusted connection. Work and home is fine. I always say just please don't go to Starbucks to write your items, even though you'll look really cool doing it. We ask too that you log out and close your browser when leaving your computer unattended or ending a session. So the computer does not automatically refresh the screen when the system times out. So if you have an item up on your screen, it will stay on your screen until you ask the system to do something. And finally, never discuss any item or exam content with anyone outside of the SMT, Test Development Staff. That's yours truly. My name is Rachel Aruja, or your SME Exam Development Committee. So your fellow item writers, and of course, Don Cassidy, who's always available to help you with this project. Moving on, some terminology you all are going to hear a lot while working with us and for the item development and further exam development activities. SME, that's you guys. You are subject matter experts. You are individuals who exhibit the highest level of knowledge, skill, or ability related to the topic or practice of family life. So congratulations, you're all experts. The item is the whole shebang. That's what we're going to be working on and creating. We don't say question because sometimes they won't end in question marks, but the whole thing. Our STEM is the portion of the item that presents the stimulus to which the candidate must respond, so the first part. And then our options are our responses, and you'll always have 4, A, B, C, and D. Our key is what we call the correct option or answer. And then our distractors is the incorrect option, so they distract from the key. The 3 major rules to follow when working and creating items. First and foremost, items must be linked to the content outline or the blueprint. So the blueprint was developed for the CFLE exam after a job analysis process, and during the job analysis process, we got input from practitioners all around the country and sort of asked them what's important to practice. What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed to be a competent CFLE? And we took all that information and we put it into a lovely outline. And the outline is what we use for determining acceptability of items and content. So you have to work kind of hard to stray from it. Everything I do will be related to that content outline, and everyone will be getting assignments based on that content outline. So you'll get a specific area in the content outline that'll need an item written to it, and you'll just have to go from there. So if it's, I know I hate saying this because it's scary and one of the harder items to write to, but policy. So we need something on policies. You'd have to write a policy question or those sort of things. So again, don't stress about number one. It sounds really scary, but it's really hard to stray from that rule. Point number two, all items must be true in theory and practice. And this is where you all as subject matter experts really, really shine. And this is where we really need you. There are programs out there that just hire professional test question writers and give them a reference, and then they just write test questions all day long, and they kind of churn and burn these test questions. And they have a pretty high turnover of ones that don't work. And we feel that kind of is a huge waste of time for candidates to be showing things that doesn't work. So our method is we want you as subject matter experts to look at the reference material and what the reference material says to do, and then apply it to your real life practice and say, is this what I would do as an expert in my practice? And if it's yes, and both of those worlds meet, then it is absolutely an okay item to write or concept to write an item about. We really don't want a candidate to look at an item and say, this is not what I would do in practice, but, oh, it's true for the reference. That's confusing to candidates, and we don't want to cause them any confusion. So keep in mind when you're formulating items, would I do this in practice? Is what the answer or the key is saying what I would actually do? And finally, all of our items must be supported by a valid reference. And that word support is real important there. So support means a candidate should be able to read the reference material and apply their knowledge that they gained from that reference material to answering the question. I don't want to see any test questions that are copied verbatim out of any reference material, because then it's just sort of encouraging that verbatim regurgitation of knowledge. Also, if the candidate has your reference material, they're using it to study, and you've copied directly out of a reference, you've kind of reverse breached your item. You copy directly out of a reference material, candidate has the reference, they then have your item. So please do not copy directly out of any reference materials used for your STEM or for your item. Moving on. So we have two formats that are completely acceptable to use for formulating your items. The two formats are direct and completion. We do not have a preference for either or, just however it magically flows from your pen is acceptable for us. The direct, you will see it ends in end punctuation, and then the options all start again with capital letters as sort of new sentences. Where in completion, your options complete the end of that sentence, and I'll have end punctuation. Now we have the no good, the just bad, and the plain old ugly. And this one is screaming because these item formats are not good, and you want to stay away from them. First, the fill in the blank. So we do not use fill in the blank formatted items. The reason we don't do this is because candidates tend to spend more time focusing on what fits best rather than what they know in their head to be true. They read it and reread it and reread it for what sounds the best. So that's an example of a fill in the blank item, just in case you've never seen one. And the answer is the flying fox, in case you're curious. True or false? So we obviously don't use true or false because we need 4 options, and true or false only gives us 2. What we can write are true statements if you wanted to say which of the following is true about a colony of flamingos or something along those lines. But this one is true. A group of flamingos is called a flamboyance, and a group of parrots is a pandemonium. And finally, the plain old ugly, the negatively stated items. So these items are ones that are phrased negatively. So you ask the candidate to pick the one that's not the right answer. So which of the following is not true, which all the following are this except, those type of questions. We do not like to use them because the candidate is going through the exam and they're being told to pick the one right answer and then pick the one right answer and pick the one right answer, pick the one right answer, and then pick the one wrong answer. So candidates are kind of having to backpedal their thinking when they come across these items. And it should come as no surprise to anyone here that candidates are under a lot of mental stress while sitting for a certification exam. It's a high-stakes examination. So a candidate who is already under mental stress is now backpedaling their thinking and they kind of get the question completely wrong, even if they're a competent candidate. And I've been working with groups doing item development since 2008. I started doing this. So I've been in workshop settings where my SMEs all get a question wrong. And then they all laugh at each other because they're like, oh, it's accept, I didn't read it right. And everyone has a big laugh about it. But if it happens to subject matter experts in a relaxed workshop setting, it's only fair to think the same would happen to a competent candidate in a stressful testing environment. And we don't want to do anything that's unfair to our candidates. So that's my huge rant, I guess, about why we don't do negatively stated items. And I feel like I have to give the rant and all the reasons behind it because negatively stated questions are really easy to write. It's way easier to think of 3 right things than 1 wrong thing, especially as experts, because you do 3 right things more than you do 3 wrong things, I guarantee you. So I know it might be tricky, or I know it might be difficult to phrase these things positively and always have them a positive item and not negatively stated, but I ask you, please no negatively stated items. Before I move off this slide, the answer to this is Christian Bale, if you were curious. He has not been the Joker.
Good to know.
There's always, some fun little trivia facts in here. So now that you've got the basic rules down of the formatting and all that good stuff, how are we going to do this? What's the strategy to accomplish this? We really, really want to aim towards practice-based items. I saw that Dawn just joined us, and she will mirror this as well and say we really want practice-based items. We don't want any, I'm trying to think, like knowledge that's just verbatim out of a textbook. We want them to test what they're doing in practice and what they need to be able to demonstrate in practice, not just scholarly memorization.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We want to write to the level of the target candidate. So that is thinking of their experience level as well as reading level. So these are entry-level practitioners. So when we're thinking of concepts to test on and write questions on, we really want to think about as their entry-level family life practitioners. These are not experts. They have not been here for 25 years. So we want to write questions for them. We want to use terminology that they would encounter in practice. So if you think about if it was a physician's exam, we could definitely use medical terms that lay people would not know because it's the exam for physicians. So don't ever try and, I don't want to say like dumb down things, but don't try and adjust your language because it might not be a word that the general public doesn't know if you think a family life educator should know it. We want to remain free of creating any potential bias, and we do that by always using titles instead of names. So we'll always say the educator or the learner or the family, things like that. We never give anybody any names. And we refrain from mentioning sex, age, religion, all that good and juicy stuff, unless it's imperative to the understanding of an item. Again, the physician's exam, a care plan for a 14-year-old female is going to be different than a 72-year-old male. So if it's imperative to the understanding of the item, absolutely throw it in there. We also don't use the word you when formulating our items. If we phrase something, you're an educator, you have this situation, what should you do? The candidate then internalizes it and can argue any option is correct because it's what they would do. So we need to make sure we say, this, there is an educator, they have this situation, what should they do? So that's how we phrase it without using you. All items should present a single problem. So don't ask 2 questions in one item. Those are 2 separate questions. Also, everyone's going to have so many questions to write. You know, why stress yourself out by putting 2 into 1? You can just have it as 2 and get your assignment done faster. We want to be clear and concise as possible. This is not a reading test. Candidates should not have to spend extra time figuring out what's being asked of them. They should be able to read the item, formulate an answer in their brain, find an answer in one of those 4 options, select it, and move on with their lives. On the flip side of that coin, we want to provide all the necessary information in the STEM to answer the questions. Candidates should not have to make assumptions. For application level questions, they should make logical conclusions, but we don't want them to have to assume or guess. And finally here, we want to be free of any style errors like teaching statements and vague stems, which we'll see an example of right here. So a teaching statement is when we have more information in the STEM than what we really need to answer the item. And our example of that is pieces on a chessboard are king, queen, bishop, knight, rooks, and pawns. Which chess piece was originally called the elephant? So that first statement, it's nice to know. It frames the item, but you don't need it to answer it. Take it out. Which chess piece was originally called the elephant? It's a much clearer item. Spent less time reading it. And we don't want to take candidates' time by, again, giving that necessary or unnecessary information to wade through. And when we have extra information like that in the STEM, it tends to create bad pairs or enemies in our bank. So any unnecessary information, just take it out. And the answer to this one is the bishop. So this is an example of a vague STEM. We have here, the common cold is. A candidate reading the STEM can say the common cold is my favorite excuse to stay home and watch The Price is Right. The common cold is really annoying, but I'm going to go to work anyway. Like, we don't know what it's asking here. So we have to see our options. So I always say my mom would say B, and my husband would say C, but you and I know it's D. It's probably D. So the candidate's now having to spend extra time reading the options to really figure out what's being asked of them and then find the right answer, which, if we're asking about characteristics of the common cold, throw it up into the STEM. So now we have symptoms of the common cold include. And without even reading the options, if you hear symptoms of the common cold include, you kind of get some things percolating in your brain. You're like, okay, sneezing, coughing, runny nose, those sort of things. And then I can see easily and choose it. So that's really the process we want candidates to take. They read the STEM, they think of an answer in their head, and that answer should be reflected in one of the 4 options if they're a competent candidate to allow them to easily select their answer and move on to the next item. So now we're moving on to our options. The number one thing about options, which as you recall are responses, options must be parallel. And that is my nerdy little mission in life, is parallel options. Parallel options all day long. If any of you guys end up doing item review with me after all these items have been written, you're going to hear me talk about parallel options even more as we go through and edit items. And we'll see lots of examples on them, so I'm going to scoop down for now and say we need also one clear and unique key. So what that means is we don't want an answer or a distractor that's one word different, and I've seen this, one letter different than the key. Because again, candidates are under that stress. They might be reading things quickly to try and take as take as much advantage of the time that they have. They do have a time limit while sitting for this examination. They cannot take as much time as they need. So they may transpose some letters in their head, or maybe not read an "and" that was in one option and not in another. So we want to, again, not trick any candidates or put any competent candidates at a disadvantage. So clear and unique answer key. We want to avoid the use of always, never, any sort of absolutes, and our distractors, because it's a test-taking tip. If you're trying to determine which ones are wrong, if you see words like all, only, always, never in a distractor, or in an option, just cross it out as a distractor. Because when is it all done one way? When is it only this? So those are words to avoid when formulating distractors. We want to make sure our distractors are real and plausible. Don't make up anything. For candidates who've never seen anything before that looks like what you've created, we'll just cross those options off. We want them to be attractive to uninformed candidates, but again, not tricky. A million times over, we're not out to trick our candidates. So when formulating distractors, think of common misconceptions or rookie mistakes that you may have seen. Things along the same kind of path as the key, but are different than the key. If we write numeric options, they should be in ascending or descending order with no overlap. So if A is 1 to 5, B is going to be 6 to 10, not 1 to 5, 5 to 10. We also do not use all of the above or none of the above or combination options as answer choices. The parallel options, my favorite thing in the whole world. We're going to discuss them for quite a bit. There's like 4 slides on parallel options because they're so important. So what we mean by parallel options, you might hear the word parallel and think, okay, so everything kind of looks the same. But it's much more than that. We want all of our options to be that same level of complexity. So the example given here is which blood vessel is the main supplier of oxygenated blood to the kidney. And we have renal artery, iris, capillary, and intestine. Sure, that's all part of human anatomy, but it's really all over the place. You know, you've got your guts, you got your eyes. They're not the same level of complexity. It's a very simple question. So what we've done to make it more parallel is we've made everything either an artery or a vein. So now they're all directly dealing with blood, and it makes it a much more difficult item than this one. Again, we think about that purpose of the examination that we discussed at the very beginning about allowing competent candidates to achieve a distinction while precluding the candidates who are not competent. Candidates who are not competent could probably guess this one correct. Candidates who are not competent would have a heck of a harder time guessing this one correct. So again, it's not really about the length, but the same complexity of idea. Moving on to parallel options, you can tell this is another bad one because we got Grumpy Cat down there in the corner. Mirrored sets. So when creating mirrored sets, candidates will look for, well, candidates who take test prep courses will look for 2 that are very, very similar. And then the one that's not is, well, the ones that are not are obviously out. So you end up with almost a 50-50 item. The example given here, excess glucose, hypoglycemia, and hyperglycemia, they're so close. You don't need to know anything about it. You're going to be kind of drawn to those 2 and have a 50-50 item. So to fix it here, and you're allowed to have 2 sets. So if you have up-down, have a left-right. But don't have an up-down and then rock-banana. So the 2 that are outliers are going to stay apart. But if we have 2 sets of mirrored options, like how this has been changed, it's a much more difficult item than that. So we have hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, hypokalemia, hyperkalemia. Again, for parallel options, using the same amount of detail throughout is really important. So the example given here is in ice hockey, what is cross-checking? So I have looking both ways before stepping onto the ice, 2-minute minor penalty for hitting an opponent with a stick when it is held with 2 hands and no part of the stick is on the ice, crossing the ice from one zone to another, or coaches matching 2 players for the same rotation. So if you don't know anything about ice hockey, B is still probably going to look the best to you. It's got the most detail. It's definitely the longest. It's twice, I think, the amount of words as the rest of them. And it uses the most, I guess, hockey-specific terminology. So keep that in mind when you're kind of developing your key. Because if you use sort of industry-specific language in only the key, and then your distractors are all kind of general public language, it's going to be very obvious to a test-wise candidate, someone who's just might not necessarily be a competent candidate, but someone who's a really good test taker. It'll be really apparent to them when they're going through and they just can see which one looks the juiciest. Subsets. So subsets are when, and again, we can tell this is a bad one because we got Grumpy Cat here with us. Subsets are when options are part of another option. And to further explain that, the example we have here is a client arriving at a tattoo parlor requesting a sweet AC/DC logo tattoo. What is the first step for the tattoo artist? And our options are confirming placement, forming a client consultation, evaluating the skin condition, and explaining the price. So the issue with this is that discussing the price, evaluating the condition of the skin, and confirming the placement are all part of the client consultation process. So a candidate who knows this, knows the client consultation process, does not know which option to choose. All are correct. These items trick up higher performing candidates more so than lower performing candidates. So lower performing candidate who only has kind of a basic knowledge of client consultation knows to choose that. The higher performing candidate who knows about all the elements of client consultation would be the one who gets confused and tripped up on this. So make sure all of your options are unique from each other. There's not an option that the process is included under the umbrella of another option. So now we have like all of these crazy rules and all of these formats, and it's kind of a little scary and a little daunting when you're staring at a blank screen or a blank piece of paper and I say, write an item for policy. And you go, okay, cool. Don't ever worry about submitting a perfect item right off the bat. It does not happen. I've been working with some people for, the past 8 years, and they don't submit perfect items still the first time around. No one does. That's why we have a committee to item write and to evaluate and to revise and approve items. I had to go through even these examples multiple times, so don't stress out about getting the perfect item down the first time. Submit your item, put it into the system, save it, walk away, and then maybe the next day go back and rethink about those rules and look for teaching statements or look for vague stems, and then kind of go back and edit it and wind it down. Don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. Also look for cluing, which we'll see an example of. Always correct keys, which we'll see an example of. Any obvious or humorous distractors, I call them Sunday at 5 o'clock distractors, when you're like just at the deadline and you put something in. Any excess information, again, cut out. It's not a reading exam. No slang or colloquial terms. No use of brand names. Always have to spell it out, a facial tissue instead of Kleenex, for example. And of course, any incorrect spelling or grammar. So cluing, what is cluing? Cluing is when we have key terms that are repeated in the stem and in the key. So the example given here is, what does Josh wish for in the movie Big? If you don't know this movie, there's a big clue there in D, to be big. It's kind of, again, you don't have to know this to figure it out. Those words are repeated. So sometimes it's really impossible, especially when dealing with maybe How we fixed it here is, what does Josh wish for in the movie Big? And now we have Big in all of our options: big league ball player, big shot Hollywood actor. To have a big brother to play with, to be big enough to ride a carnival ride. We've sort of buried our key. And as you can see, all of these are parallel. They're all sort of the same idea. Cluing is, again, really hard to spot when you are first submitting an item. So this is definitely something to go back and look for at the final submission stage. Always correct keys. We don't want to write any items where the key is always correct no matter what the situation is. And the example given here is a client sending a practitioner a friend request on social networking. How should the practitioner proceed? And the key here is refer to company policy. It's never wrong to refer to policy. It is never wrong to seek supervision or to ask the advice of a supervisor. All those things are never wrong. So the way we have to get around these types of questions is to kind of tease it out more. Why go to a supervisor? Where in the policy would this be? So is this a computer use policy, or is this more of an ethics policy type question? That's how we would avoid that just always correct key of refer to company policy. So our last bit here is on Bloom's taxonomy. So we're going to be talking about 3 levels that we want to use for this exam. What is Bloom's taxonomy as it applies to test questions, you may ask? Well, considering that we have this multiple choice item format, and that's all we have to measure competency. We don't have a practical. We don't send Dawn to a candidate's potential place of employment and watch them as they work with families. We just have this multiple choice format. So our items really have to pull double duty in testing both knowledge and skill. And the way that we test skill and a multiple choice is by using various cognitive domains in our items, or applying items to various cognitive domains. And our first one is knowledge. So knowledge, or remembering, are basic step 1 level. So this is asking, can the candidate recall some previously learned information? The example given here, which of the following animals is an amphibian? I don't want to give an impression that by saying this is the basic level, that these are bad items. That's not the case. But we do want to use these sparingly. Remember, we really want to get at practice-based questions. So practice is kind of more the next step. By the way, the key is A here, if anyone was curious. Application. So these are the gold star items. These are what I want to see a lot of. Can the candidate use previously learned knowledge, apply it to the situation, and solve a problem? So if we think about Bloom's taxonomy kind of like a bus station map or a subway map. So knowledge is just one point on the map. Application is a line. So like the blue line, where it's a point, a line, and a point. So they're having to take knowledge and apply it. In this example, we have applying a wound prosthetic. A special effects makeup artist is applying a wound prosthetic to an actor's arm. The actor begins wheezing and experiencing shortness of breath. What should the makeup artist do? And the key is to remove the prosthetic and call emergency services, because the actor is having an allergic reaction to probably the liquid latex that's being used to apply the prosthetic. Notice in this item we have never said allergic reaction. So a knowledge-based example of this item would be, which of the following are symptoms of an allergic reaction to liquid latex? And then we would have written out wheezing and shortness of breath. So the candidate has to make that logical connection that this is an allergic reaction and then choose the right answer. That's what makes it an application level question. So the next one's going to get a little weird, so I ask you all to bear with me for a minute. Critical level thinking questions. These are like application questions on steroids. So if we think about our bus map again, or subway map, while our knowledge is 1 point, and our application is a line between 2 points, our critical thinking is like the whole map. There's multiple points, there are multiple things going around. We can have to go to A to B, back to C to D, the whole map. What makes these more advanced is that there are multiple things at play, I guess, in the item. So I'm a video game fan. It's going to come out eventually, I guess. So the only thing I'm an expert in, I guess, is video games. So that's why I wrote my critical level thinking question about it. So we have this video game, Borderlands, and we have a party that are going to fight the ancient dragons of destruction. We have a party consisting of 2 level 45 commandos equipped with Fabled Tortoise and a level 50 Siren with Flame of the Firehawk. For the highest chance of success, what dragon should the team take out first? And that should sound like it's in a different language to you all, if you are not nerdy gamers like me. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's really what critical thinking questions will do. If you write a CFLE, critical level thinking question, I should look at it the same way that you are looking at this one right now. Probably thinking like, I recognize this is English, but none of these words really make sense together. And that's fine. What really makes a critical level thinking question is that each element comes into play to finding the correct answer. So, for example, D Incinerator. He does a nasty bit of fire damage. I might want to kill him first, but my team has Fabled Tortoise and Flame of the Firehawk, which are fire-resistant shields, so I can let him live. If the item didn't have that in there, the key would change to D. So that's really how critical level thinking question works. It's like a case where it unravels and every bit is needed to come at the correct key. If something was changed in the stem, another key could be correct. I don't expect a lot of items written like this, but if you would like to take a stab at one, I would absolutely be thrilled about it. They are very difficult. You'll spend a lot of time writing these, but the good news about these is once you kind of spend some time and you create one, you can make multiple test questions out of them. So if I just kind of separate this out and I have a case, so I have now my first question is that for the highest chance of success. My next question, another player joins the game. What class of character would be most helpful? So you can use that setup, again, what elemental damage should be equipped. You can use your main block of text and write multiple questions on it, and then you can knock out your 5 questions, and we can have a case study in the examination if it works out, if it gets through the review and approval committee. It would be fun to attempt that if you guys would like to attempt it. If not, no one has to. So I know it's kind of awkward to end this portion of the exam on that crazy kind of critical level thinking question, but are there any questions or concerns before we get into the online item writing system?
This is Dawn. I just wanted, because I came a little late, which I apologize, but I just wanted to say hi and thank you all for taking time this afternoon to go through all this, and for Rachel to take the time and do this as well. So that's all. Just wanted to say hello.
Hello.
All right. So our online item writing system. Let me bring it up here real quick. System is, hold on, the system has booted me out. Now I just gotta get back in there. He's angry at me. There we go. Okay, so there's going to be a a Word document that has a walkthrough of all of this system, but it'll probably make more sense than this presentation because you guys will just sort of see this and it's gonna just kind of all go away with this one because this system is kind of a pain for the first time working on it. It takes a real bit of effort to get used to this. I know I hated it the first time I used it, and now it's a second nature to me. And I hear that from subject matter experts as well. Everyone new who's working with it absolutely hates it, but then once they get the hang of it, they're like, oh, it's so easy. I can't believe I was frustrated before. So I promise, if you're new to this system and it's frustrating you, I've been there, I feel you, I'm so sorry, but it does get easier. And if you ever have any trouble with it or are looking for any sort of hints or tips or strategies for working in it, please feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always available by email if you have any issues with the system. So when you get in, it will ask you to change your password, and it'll kind of look like this, where you just paste in your current password and then type your new one twice and then click change. If you see up at this corner here in the left, there is this little door with the green arrow. That is the system's back arrow. You want to make sure that you're always using that instead of your browser's back arrow. Using your browser's back arrow can get the system to be quite cranky, and you may end up with a system error, while using the system's back arrow makes it a bit happier. The first time you log in, this screen will be a pretty off-putting tan color. If you go to this color scheme button up here, you can create your own color scheme. There's some templates that are up there, and you can kind of see what those look like. That's kind of hideous, even though I'm a purple fan. This one's okay. And then if you click set, it'll change it. Or you can even do custom colors down here if you want to get crazy. Again, the back arrow here, you can see that's applied. So that's a kind of a neat feature for some of my older item writers who have seen that ugly tan color and wanted to change it. We can now change it. This should say NCFR in this bank. It'll automatically populate for you. If it says anything other than NCFR, please notify me immediately. I've never had that happen, but it's a really important thing, so I have to say it. We don't want you writing your items in the veterinary bank or something like that.
So Rachel, this is Dawn. So I just want to clarify. I know we have at least one person who hasn't been involved in the past, but just for everyone's sake as well. So we have, it says NCFR CFLE, but what we're doing, we have like a test bank, a CFLE test bank, but we're also using one test bank to create the Family Life Education Assessment exam that we've just launched, or will be launching in the fall. So these questions are all going into that same test bank. Is that correct, Rachel?
Everything starts in the online item writing bank, and then they get approved, and they will be separated into the separate banks as needed.
Okay, and so for when people are writing questions, it doesn't matter to them if it's going to go to the CFLE, used for the CFLE exam or for the assessment exam. You'll never necessarily know which one it goes to, and you don't need to be thinking about that because they all should be doing the same thing, is testing knowledge of that content area. But I just wanted to clarify that because it'll say CFLE, but in the end, we have basically one test bank from which we pull those questions, like Rachel just said. Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. Yep. And it absolutely doesn't matter if we're writing for the assessment or the CFLE. Both items are doing the same thing. They're doing the same job, and they should be at the same level. We don't want to make anyone think of, or if we're doing, like, for example, if we're doing a practice exam, there's a common misconception that the items of the practice exam could be easier than the ones that are on the actual exam, and that is unfair to candidates, because if you give them a whole exam of easy items, they will not be prepared for the actual CFLE examination. So both items should be the same level of difficulty, the same level of experience, all the same rules apply to both sets of items no matter where they end up. That was a really good point. Thank you, Dawn. So again, if this says anything other than NCFR, please let me know. We are going to click begin. And then I will make this really easy for you. I will have it grayed out everywhere except for where you are supposed to go. So test development and stuff like that will be grayed out for you. You should be only able to click item development. Here's an example of some grayed out buttons. If you look at like image library, that's grayed out. So I can click it. You hear me clicking? And I can't go to it. So The one that will not be grayed out here is create edit. So you're going to be creating and editing items. And I'm going to jump to the last one. For the first time in the system, I am now regretting choosing these colors. They're a little like Barbie in Miami. I'm not digging it, but the first time you're in the system, it will look like this. This is what we really call the item dashboard. So the item text will go here, and then you have all sorts of fun things that you have to tell me about your item. First and foremost, the best thing about this system is it's web-based, and you can access it anywhere you can access the internet. The worst part about this system, it is web-based, and it is only as strong and fast and responsive as your connection to the internet. So if you have a kind of shoddy connection, a weak connection to the internet, the system could be slow, and it could time you out or something along those lines, and you could lose your item. So I highly, highly recommend using a word processor, Notepad or Word, to write your items out first, and then paste them into the system when you're complete. And then permanently, once your item is saved and you know it's in the system, permanently delete that Word backup, which means put it into your recycle bin and then clear your recycle bin. Part of the security agreement as item writers is that you cannot retain any copies of your items. They all belong to NCFR. So please make sure you delete if you're writing out all sorts of items. So if you're pasting in, you're going to want to click this Edit Item Parts button right here in kind of the middle of the screen. That'll open up. If you're using Safari, this system works best in Firefox, Chrome, and then it's okay in Internet Explorer, and it really doesn't like Safari. So I always use Chrome. I can highly recommend Chrome. If you're in Safari, there's a bug where this window will open up full screen. If that happens, you have to close your browser and completely back out. It will not let you return from this screen if it opens full screen. So you see here we have a box for your stem, which, as you remember, is the portion of the item that presents the stimulus to which the candidate must respond. And then our options, there's A, B, C, and D, separate windows. And there's this little tag thing here, it's called HTML. So if you're pasting from a Word document, you're going to want to click HTML for all of these boxes. That makes sure when you paste in from another document that the item does not bring over any hidden junk HTML. So that would mess up your formatting and make it look all crazy. Also on the screen, if I click anywhere in the, come on, it's not going up. Oh, I'm in the HTML. I'm in the design phase and I click in the blue. You get your taskbar. So you can use a table if you wanted to use a table. Even an image uploader if you want to upload images. You just have to have the rights to them. No stealing stuff from Google. A spell check that I'm just going to tell you is the worst spell checker in the world. It knows like 5 words. And then we have superscript, subscript, symbols, things like that. If you click anywhere in the blue, it goes away. Click in the white, it brings it up. We'll type something in here. We'll have that stem. Say I like that stem. I can hit return, and return will populate it into our preview window. This is where you can kind of check how it looks, how your formatting looks. It will highlight where your options are, where your mouse goes. That's a function of our computer-based testing system. So this window shows how an item will look in the computer-based testing system. When you hit return, that does not save your item. That just populates that window. To save your item, you have to hit this green save button up here at the top left corner, and then you'll get this really like 90s success button that tells you that your item was successfully saved. You can save your item at any time during the process. Like I don't even have a key, I don't have a status, I just have a stem, and I saved it. So we used to have it that you had to have all of these factors indicated first. You had to have a complete item, you had to have your status, your domains, your reference, all those things before you could save it. We took that away, so now you can save as many times throughout the process as you need to to make sure that you're saving your work as you go along. So that save button is there. Hit it as many times as you need. If you don't want to copy and paste your items, or if you copied and pasted it and you want to work on it kind of all together in this edit mode, I use edit item whole. So this, you can see, puts everything all together. So again, clicking in the white box gives me my toolbar. Clicking in the blue makes it go away. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to give some options. And I'm going to spell words correctly, maybe. So once I have an item in there, and I like the way it looks, same story, return, and return populates my window. I'm going to go ahead and give it a save. It saves successfully. So now when you have your item all written out, you have to indicate 4 things for me. The key, your status, your domains, and then your reference. So you need 5. It might look, this whole screen might look a little scary, but you only need 5 things. And when I send out all the materials, those 5 things will be reiterated. And those 5 things are your item itself, the key, the status, the domain, and the reference. Just 5 things. So the key is a drop-down menu. So you click your little arrow, and you can choose. So this one is B. The golden knights are still in it. Not my lightning, which is heartbreaking, but we're not going to talk about that right now. And then your status. You will, I have a lot of statuses, but you will have 2 that will be available to you. And those will be draft and ready for review. So draft indicates to me that you are still working on an item. Like I said, you can get an item in there, save it as draft, take a nap, come back, work on it some more. So draft indicates to me you are still working on an item, which is completely fine. It can live in draft status until I think July 6th when we start doing item review. So please have, and I'll go out to in all the materials and we'll tell you when the drop dead deadline is. So for the whole month, if you want to keep it in draft status and continue to work on it, you're more than welcome to. When you are done and you're ready to submit it to the review committee, it's going to be ready for review status. So those are your 2 status codes. Let's scroll over here a bit, and your domains are also drop-down menus. So your major domains, all 10, are listed here. So let's say that this is a parenting, education, and guidance item. You select that, and then the screen kind of refreshes. And then you can choose your subdomains. So here are all the listed as the recognized cultural differences. So you can see it there. So there's no 3rd level here. But again, you will be provided an assignment based on the areas of expertise that you have indicated to Dawn. So that'll be your major domain. And then I will give you some guidance in the minor domains as far as saying we need 2 items in domain 7. Maybe please don't write any to A because we have a ton of those, but you could write to any other one. So there will be some leeway in there, some freedom where you can kind of go and choose where in the minor domains to write to, but for the major domains, they're pretty restricted. Finally, your references. For the reference, it doesn't have to be perfect AP format. As long as if someone should challenge an item, we can look at the reference and know where to find it. So the title, the author, the year, and the page are kind of the most important things to provide for the reference. And again, please remember all items must have a reference. And this you can just type directly in here. If you're using the same reference over and over again, I would recommend typing it out again on Word, and then you could just copy and paste it into this system.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we don't have, Dawn, or both of you, we don't have we used to have the list of a lot of those references that came from the study sheet. Do we not have that list anymore?
Dawn, if you send me that list, I can get it in the bank.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, so we have a list of resources that have been used in the past to support questions, and we can send you that list. But don't feel as though you can only use those books as support, because if you don't have them, or you can use other resources. It's been a little bit of a struggle because people want, like, when they're studying, they're like, well, what should I study? What should I read? And so we have provided some of the books that have been used in this past, but then there's this impression that, they have to have those books or go out and buy them. And we want the questions to be written in a way that they would know that from any number of sources, but for our purposes, we have to have at least one resource that is tied to the question, so that if someone questions it, we can go back and say, here, this is why we have this answer. This is the reference for it. So I wouldn't use. I mean, I guess technically you can use any resources that you want, but if you're writing the question well, it should be something that the answer could be supported through any, from multiple resources.
Okay.
So a long answer, but I will send you the list, and I think it's on the website too. That's just.
I've got the list, so I have. Well, I mean, I know there are other things I can use too, but I had the books that were on the list for my 2 areas. But okay, because I thought there used to be a drop-down list but okay, and then there was the option to write in.
Yeah,
write in another one.
Who's talking?
Jennifer Newquist.
Jennifer. Okay, great. Thanks. I didn't see a name, so I wasn't sure who I was hearing. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, there should, right, Rachel? Isn't there a place on the page where, or is that in a different part of it where there was past references that we've used before?
Yeah. This is probably not populating. It's probably in the online item writing system. This is the live bank that I'm showing you because I knew everything was going to be loaded in here. So the references are probably in there, but if you want to send them to me anyway, and yeah, you could pick from the drop down, so it'll show up like a drop down. The only thing obviously that's not included in the drop down will be the page number, because that would be a ridiculously long drop down. So when you choose the reference material and it populates, just add the page 45 in the box.
Add the page number, because that is really important. I don't know that we've needed to do it, but the idea is that if somebody just really argues about a question, well, I don't know, because I don't know that we ever, when they take a test, they have an opportunity to write. There's a form sheet that they can write, and they will say, I think this question had 2 correct answers, or I didn't like this question, or there is no right answer, or whatever. But I don't know that we ever. My understanding is we never actually go back to the person and explain it or ever, but we want to have these references as a way to support the questions, right? Right, Rachel?
Right, but we don't ever go back to individual comments and say, oh, we looked at your comments and you're totally wrong. We don't say that. If someone were to email maybe Dawn and say, I failed the examination and it's because all these items were unfair and I'm suing the NCFR. And then we would have to go back and show that, no, this item, and this is what the reference says, and this is where we tied it, this is where we belong, that it would be a long, drawn-out process, and making sure all of our items are referenced is part of that validation process.
Right. So that supports that, it's not as though we make the list of every book that's used as a reference public. And so if you have other books that probably hasn't really been updated now in a couple of years. So if there's some key books that you think would be valuable resources for people studying for the exam, let me know, because maybe we should add them to the list. But we're kind of looking at the possibility of creating some kind of a study guide, because there just seems to be a lot of people struggle because of the diversity of 10 different content areas in the range. they want more guidance as to how to prepare. So any ideas you have for resources, let me know.
Great. Thanks, Dawn. You'll see some other things in here. Author automatically populates. So this will also be locked down. So if you're not really sure about an item, you cannot assign it to somebody else. And it automatically captures the date that you created it as well. So you don't have to worry about assigning your name to it. It already will do it. Rationale is just a field that you would use if it was like a math question and you had to show your work. So you don't need to worry about rationale. Comments and CID and keywords are all for me. So all this stuff is also for me. So you don't have to worry about any of that at all. Again, just to reiterate, I need 5 things from you. I need the item text. I need the key, the status, the domains, and the reference. And again, so it'll tell if it's saved. There's a reference in there. I can tell there's a reference in there because it turns red. There's something in there for me to look at. And again, your save button is up here. It will always tell you if you saved correctly. If you change something, so let's say I want to change the shark to and I return, and I try and move off my item, it's going to tell me that the stem has changed, and it won't let me leave the item. Again, it'll tell me the stem has changed. If I don't want to keep my change, I can hit the leave without saving option that pops up here, or I can save my changes. Boop. And now I can move off of it if I wanted to. When you're ready to create a new item, you do this add new. It'll pop up into a little window that says, are you sure you want to add a new item? You click OK, and it will go back to that blank screen and you start from the beginning. So again, this will all be given to you in a Word document with screenshots that'll walk you through this whole process. I know, like, all the item development from a fire hose. A lot of information at once, but there'll be lots of materials and stuff sent to everyone, and that will be sent on Monday. So if you do not have an email from me in your inbox by Monday at like 3 p.m. with your assignments, access to the system, and all of your support materials, please send me an email letting me know, because I will definitely have that to everyone 3 o'clock on Monday. So that's when you can start your item writing. Are there any questions or concerns?
Yeah.
Give it time, right? I think I know Hazel was on the call. I see there's a caller 1 and 2 that I'm not sure who they are, but Hazel is new to the committee. I don't know if you guys introduced yourselves at the beginning of this or not, but so hi, Hazel. And just, I don't know, is Mara on or Nikita? Or I think one of the caller ones must be Jennifer. So I'm not sure who the other one is.
I guess then we're done. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for spending an hour and a half with me today and listening to me rant on about item development and parallel options.
Yes, I appreciate the refresher.
Yeah.
Always good.
No problem. I really hope you guys enjoy the process. It is extremely difficult, but I hope you find it rewarding as well. And we absolutely could not do this without you. A huge value in this program is that we have subject matter experts who are willing and able to participate and help us with this process. Your knowledge and your efforts are just, I don't even have words for it. It's just beyond compare, and it's just so valuable. And thank you so, so much. We could not do it without you. And if you need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to me.
And I agree with everything you just said. Thank you, Rachel. I support that as well. Thank you all for your help. And we'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.